the big inflection point was because of the hardware, was because now it's not just doing the math, but it's doing the math fast. It's really for us, for humans, to kind of look at an output and saying, I really like this output. This is useful for me. The technology just takes words as an input, figures out the next best words, and processes out. We had to reinvent ourselves and be relevant again. So I think that's true again, and that's true always. And now people are going to have to pivot faster and iterate quicker.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. Today I'm joined by Lior Weinstein, a serial entrepreneur, an AI enthusiast, and the founder of CTOX. He's built and exited multiple companies, developed 30 plus apps used by millions, and had some of the most fascinating insights on how AI is reshaping both business and family life. Lior, thank you so much for being here, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Let's jump in. Like, what sparked your passion for AI, and where was that aha moment that got you in this industry?
Interesting. So actually the first time I ever kind of manipulated a neural network, a digital neural network, was when I was like 14. So this is, without to date myself, many moons ago. So we're looking somewhere in the 90s. And in so I grew up in Israel. And the biggest kind of like the Israeli MIT, it's called the Technion. They came to our school. They did a special projects with a bunch of students, and they actually gave us software to like create simulated neural networks. Wow. And my very first project was to simulate the neural network of birds, specifically to figure out dreaming for birds.
Wow.
Which was very cool. So that was kind of my first foray and how I learned about artificial intelligence and neural network as a very concept. Like, how can we take kind of a protein-based neurons, right, made out of pizza for a lot of people, and make it digital, right? Make it bits and bytes. Certainly. So I've been fascinated with the topic for like ever since. I think like a lot of people, progress of technology in the space, for years we kind of went on to the neural network route, mostly with machine learning models. So I did a lot of computer vision. It was this big project, still big, OpenCV, Open Computer Vision, for many years. So I did both image recognition and video, and these are very different problems, and extrapolation of pixels, very different problems. And then I started writing some patents in the space. So back in 2017, around literally like structuring unstructured content, a lot of the things that people are talking about now. And certainly from a day-to-day business, once ChatGPT came out, it was fascinating because, like a lot of earlier developers in the space, I played with the GPT-1s and the GPT-2, and it was always cute and nice. And then, this incredible product came into the market. And what happened to me is that a lot of my entrepreneur friends were like, what the heck is going on? What do we do with this? So I immediately jumped in and started kind of giving workshops. And I give a few dozen, probably well over 40 at this point. And my workshop, the last one was actually just last week. And I was looking at my slides, and really, even now, so we're 2 years and a bit in, it changed maybe 10% of the content, because most of what I ended up talking and teaching about was about how to think about this. Like, okay, technology is going to change, products are going to change, but what doesn't change? What are the principles of this? How to make it useful? How to understand it intuitively, and not just like flashbang. Here's a few prompts. I do that as well. I kind of show a few cool things, but that's maybe 5 or 10 minutes of an hour or 2-hour workshop. So certainly, ever since ChatGPT and the APIs came out, so large language models suddenly became business relevant, is when it took a whole different acceleration and attention for me on day to day.
Lior, folks like you have been working on AI for 20 plus years. It's clear. Yet to the normal person, it looks like it all came out last year. Tell us why they made such tremendous progress in the last year versus the 20, 30 years previous in regards to commercial success, commercial progress. Obviously, right. Things have been happening behind the scenes for many years, but tell me how that came about.
So, we've had the math. It's interesting because the industry is it's amazing to see history from these kind of big patterns, right? So AI as a thing, as a research topic, has been around for 60 years, maybe more. And we've had the math for this particular utility, this particular model, since like 2017, right? So a research team at Google released this paper, Attention is All You Need, inventing the transformer model. which is what all of this is based on. So we've had this for a while, and I'm saying it's Kodak because, the team at Kodak invented the digital, camera, and they missed out on that. And I
Wow.
think that's what's happening with, Google and the world. That's why Sergey Brin, came back and said, I'm going to go back to Google, out of whatever he was doing. So we've had the math, but what we didn't have is the hardware. And this is really why NVIDIA is such a big deal, right? It's not so much of doing it, but imagine if you go to ChatGPT, any AI now, and you put in a prompt. You put in a prompt like, here's all the food I have in the refrigerator. Give me my meal plan. Here's all the stuff that, I have a family of 4. I want to travel to Europe. We have $5,000 worth of budget. What's the best itinerary? And then you came back, 2 hours later, and they give you this full blown plan, right? Just incredible with all the details. But it took you 2 hours. What do you think of that utility? Like, how addictive do you think that product would be
Not so.
relative to the real time, right? Not so
Yeah.
much. So the big inflection point was because of the hardware. Was because now it's not just doing the math, but it's doing the math fast and suddenly give you this real-time feedback. So a lot of people looking at this like a software revolution, but this is really hardware. Like, the hardware is what created the utility, because we've had the math for a while, and the software is actually fairly simple, like meaning the code.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the NVIDIA
Wow.
moment. That's why NVIDIA also is, I wouldn't want to compete with them. I never wanted to compete with them. I love NVIDIA. NVIDIA is one of those just, inspiring hardware companies. But now their ability to get ahead of everyone else is just staggering. I don't know how many years
Who
it'll be
else
before.
is in that space doing things similar to Nvidia? I know they're the biggest player. They're the 800-pound gorilla. But who else is in the space that we should be aware of?
I mean, nothing in the big. I mean, so you have the big chips, right? So Broadcom, AMD, Intel, but everybody's so far behind Nvidia. I think what's happening though is that you see all these startups raising a lot of money because they know, like, the first companies to solve this are gonna make a lot of money, either by just getting bought by Nvidia, or just truly, just like Intel. When Intel came up and they created this, Intel, but now we know it isn't, but it used to be a startup like everybody else. NVIDIA also used to be a startup like anybody else. So a lot of the stuff to watch for right now are new startups, in my opinion, new startups that are innovating the chip model on AI. So their processing power can do it. So right now you have all this hoo-ha, and right now as we're recording this, what's happening with the NVIDIA stock, and we're in the aftermath of like DeepSeek and all these other news that people are like selling off the stock, which is, it's
Yes.
a temporary blimp at best. But the reaction is because of this thought that right now NVIDIA chips are actually very expensive and you need a lot of them. So there's a sense of, well, what if you don't need as many as we thought, right? Or what if we can do cheaper chips? So those are the companies to look at. Now I can't name a specific one that I would put any money on, because it's all new, it's all startups, and it's one thing to invent a chip, it's another one to putting into production and to scale. It's like different levels of problem. I think that's why those startups are taking these big bets, because NVIDIA has the manufacturing. So if they can have the innovation, then maybe else somebody can do it. And all of this, we're still innovating in the large language model universe, which is obviously very high utility. It's bringing all this amazing productivity, but it's just one way of doing AI. Now there's a whole new generation of, now that there's capital and attention, I'll give you an interesting number if you want in a minute on how much attention, then all these other models are coming up that are not large language models, or people are combining. I just saw a cool model just a few days ago that's using diffusion, which means it's the same technology as we're using with image generation. So you get a prompt, you get a word, and then you suddenly blast off pixels, right? And what's interesting about diffusion models is that they kind of work like sculpting. So you start off with a list of words that suggests a certain array of pixels on the screens, like what's kind of like, Minesweep, right? If you used to play with it as a kid, like if this is the pixel, what are the pixels to the left and right and top and bottom? And you start off with noise, and then you literally sculpt out a picture from the noise. So it starts off with like nothing, and then it creates a puppy, right? So they're using the same model for language. So instead of generating a token at a time, basically a word at a time for layman's purposes, it's generating 5,000 words at a time. and then it's generating 5 and then taking off words that are irrelevant, which is kind of cool. So
Wow.
it's kind of like speed reading. Instead of like reading it, parsing word by word and line by line, you just like entire pages or entire books. And then
Wow.
over the next few seconds, instead of adding more words, you're actually removing words
How
because you're
interesting.
self-correcting. Yeah, super cool. And then same processing power. So if in the same processing power, instead of generating 1,000 tokens a minute, you're generating 1,000 tokens for a fraction of a second. Well, again, more productivity. So you can have improvements both on the hardware side, both on the software side, and all of that is in the context of what are we trying to do. So you can imagine the Fusion model, if using AI to do customer service, right? Like answer the phone,
Mm-hmm.
hi, Mr. Weinstein, what can I help you today? And I'm saying I need help with my credit card. It's not useful to use that kind of a model for a conversation because that's going to be a weird conversation. Suddenly using garbled words that mean nothing until you distill a sentence that means something. So all of these things are getting balanced and developed at the same time. What are the use cases? What is the software? What is the hardware? And all of that is just really an explosion of productivity right now. So hardware is definitely going to develop, but software is developing faster than hardware because bits move faster than atoms, and it's exciting. So I'm sure there's going to be a whole bunch of winners, and the winners are probably going to end up doing this kind of case specific. NVIDIA, for the longest time, was the winner in graphic processing, right? That's why everybody knew them as like, graphics cards, right? To play the best games, the best 3D games. That's why their chips were so good and they were the best. And then they had, competed with like AMD, but that's really where NVIDIA shined really well. Very complex graphics, very complex 3D for engineering, for games, and so on. So now they're in the AI world, and the AI is going to also distill to different use cases. So I'm sure there's going to be more hardware winners for specific use cases.
Very interesting. Let's bust some myths. What's the misconception around intelligence and AI? Where is it today, and where is it heading? Like, how advanced is it currently? Because some people say it's mind blowing how advanced it is,
Mm-hmm.
and some people say it really still doesn't. That's very basic. It doesn't know. It can't replace certain things. Tell me
Yeah.
where you think it is.
I remember Bill Gates saying this, but I'm sure a lot of people said it over the years, which, you overestimate what you can do in 1 year, you underestimate what you can do in 10. And I think that's very pertinent and relevant for the AI space. Intelligence is not there. So I think it's a mislabel. I think it's a misnomer. It is statistics, it is math, and it's kind of cool that we find it valuable. Like it's cool that we can do math and then think it means something. Like it's really for us, for humans, to kind of look at an output and saying, I really like this output. This is useful for me. So I give this example. So, I did a lot of these workshops and I try to give an example of how to think intuitively about what this thing does, what large language models do, right? We used to call them large number models before we call them large
Hmm.
language models because we just ran statistics and numbers and probabilities. So I'll give you this example. So um, people have heard this in the past. What the model tries to do, what these models tries to do, is figure out the next best word. It's a guessing game, right? That's it in a core concept. But what does it mean in practice? So let's you and I do this right now. I'm going to give you a word. You're going to give me the next one. Okay. And the first word is old. What do you think the next word is?
News.
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 Great. What other words do you think comes to you after news?
Old man. Old woman.
Perfect. Man,
Old
woman,
company.
news,
Yeah.
company. Awesome. I'm going to give you the next word after old. The next word after old is McDonald. What do you think the next word is?
Fries.
Old
Junk food.
McDonald. Old McDonald.
Oh, old McDonald. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't hear that. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Had a farm, right?
Had.
Yeah.
Right? Now, 99% had. It could be old McDonald was a very difficult person to work with. That's a
Hmm.
valid sentence. But what's the likely sentence after old McDonald? It's had a
That's
farm.
that's interesting.
And that's what this does at scale.
And that's why when you say mathematics, I was going to ask you. I know zeros and ones, and I know statistics, but I was surprised to hear that this was a mathematical concept when I'm giving it prompts and is writing depending on how accurate it is, depending on its research and the data that's out there, that's writing a pretty accurate, let's say, article.
Yeah. So accuracy is what you think it is. Right.
Yeah.
It's just doing probabilities. Just like the so you said news, man, house, company. All of these are good words. But what's the probable word? So it scans the internet, it scans your company records, it scans your personal interactions, whatever it is it's trained on. That's what training is. It's scanning words. And based on the occurrence of those words, what is the likely word it's going to print out after any word that precedes it? That's really what it does. That's why when somebody talks to me about hallucination, I'm like, the only thing it does is hallucinate. It
Yeah.
doesn't do anything but hallucinate. Like, you're just calling it an hallucination where you don't like the answer. But it's not like a database retrieval. It's not like a Google type or search engine where you put in words and it's actually looking at documents and it's copying from those documents and pasting it on the screen. It does none of that. It generates new words based on the probabilities of other words that came before. And that's all it does.
Well, sometimes it will make things up. Lior, let me give you an interesting thing that happened. You explained to us all what happened. I'm using a really great AI assistant product. Basically, what it does, it listens to my call. It shows up to my meetings. It records the meetings via Fireflies or something like that. And then it draws insights. And then it gives me like a daily, almost podcast of my days and my meetings and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty damn good. 9 out of 10 times is very accurate. Except one time. One time the person did not show up. And sometimes it responds by saying, sorry, I have nothing to tell you about the meeting with Lior. You're like, of course, Lior didn't show up. I understand. One time, Lior didn't show up, but it gave this incredible summary of how my meeting went. And it was so good. It was like, this is what you all talked about. You talked about this, next steps are this. You were both excited about this. I'm like, are you serious right now? Like, this all sounds good. I almost believe that this meeting happened, except it didn't. So talk about hallucination. What happened there?
So yeah, I love that example. So again, the only thing it does is make stuff up. So like you have an intuition on using like a search engine, and you expect that you put in words and it's gonna refer to something, right? It's gonna go to a document on internet or a piece of information it found, and it's gonna get you information based on that document. With generative AI, there's no referral, there's no reference. There's only statistics. There's only what's the likelihood of this word following that. So if you had a meeting, right, what's the likelihood that you want to see these words, right? You as a human, because that's another thing. We were trained by humans for humans as opposed to other things, and as opposed to machines, for example. And that because machines don't need words, right? You can just give them numbers, for example, and you give them characters or stuff like that. So it was trying to make you happy. and happy is really just saying it was trying to reinforce its own learning because of other feedback that it got. Now, what's happening with the models, and from a product perspective, not from a technology perspective, you're trying to constrain it. You're trying to kind of tell it from an instructions, hey, if there's no meeting, don't give anything, or say no meeting had. Or if there was a meeting, only generate possible words and inferences from content directly spoken in the meeting, and make sure that no other content was considered, and make sure that all of our corporate documents or all of our previous meetings were considered, and so on. You're basically defining the context window that it's allowed to draw those reference words from. Because if you don't do that, it's just statistics. Like, okay, well, what's a likely best word and best words that I'm going to print on this email summary?
Beyond that, it must have used information such as Lior worked at this company. Avetis shows up at this company.
It's not information.
These things, no.
It's not
interesting.
Information. Yeah, so
because
let's say
it was very specific. It was very specific about the fact that this guy worked at a specific company and HireCloud does this specific thing. And what if these two merged together? What could have been discussed during this meeting? And here it is.
So if it scanned the internet and every time it saw the word Lior, it always saw the word Weinstein. Okay? Always. 100% of the time. Then every time you print out Lior, or somebody says Lior, it thinks, oh, well, the next best word after Lior is Weinstein. We should just print Weinstein. But if it saw Weinstein and Cohen, then 50% of the time would have been Weinstein, 50% of the time would have been Cohen, right? And unless there was way more Weinsteins than Cohen and so on and so forth. So it just builds a probability table for the next best word. That's what it is. And the fact that you see value in it is kind of cool, right? Because it's not printing words, it's printing tokens. So a token, let's say the word Lior is 5873. It's an ID, right? It doesn't know Lior. It just says, okay, the next token is 5773. What's the next one after that? 8122. What's the next one after that? 9907. That's what it does. The fact that you are translating those numbers to words and you care about that result, you're like, wow, that's exciting, or that's profound, or that's fun, or that's annoying, is just your emotional response.
It doesn't use the transcript, Lior, of our conversation?
It can if the instructions were there, but the instructions would have been only use, in consideration of the response, only use words in the transcript of the meeting and so on and so forth.
Got it. But it could have just made stuff up if it was allowed to, basically.
Yeah.
So it basically does what we tell it to do. Otherwise, it will do nothing but hallucinate and make stuff up, basically, per that.
Yeah, and again, as far as it's concerned, it's making everything up. It's like, it's the fact that you're judging an output as irrelevant is a human judgment. As far as it's concerned, it did a great job with its statistics, with its math. It did a great math exercise right now.
I've noticed it does make up a lot of statistics where it'll pull stuff up. If I were to give it some basic construction, it'll just make up statistics and actually sounds pretty good, but it's not accurate because I know it's not accurate. I'm like, wait a minute, where'd you get that from? You know, and I figured some of the data that I wasn't sure about, perhaps it was getting stuff from the internet. Real good research was done behind it. Other times I thought maybe it just made it up because it sounded good.
Yeah, most likely. I mean, it needs to, for it to fill out facts, what you consider facts, this is where the product features come in and not the technology set. The technology just takes words as an input, figures out the next best words, and processes out. If you want to do stuff like facts or actual calculations, because statistics is not algebra, right? Meaning it's not like a 2 plus 2. We know to do the order of operations to make it 4, but it just like statistically, it's going to say 4 because it's seen 2 plus 2 so many times, it's just going to say 4, but it doesn't actually do the math. So if you wanted to do these things, if you wanted to do actual math, if you wanted to look at specific facts, if you want to research, this is where the product people come in, and we are seeing just incredible explosion of amazing products. And those products, you add these things like call a database, look at my schedule, make sure that this restaurant you're recommending is real because it's coming from this database of restaurants, or make sure these flight recommendations are real because it's coming from a database of flights. But all of that is not technology, it's actual product enhancements. Like how can we add features to this experience that are going to make it more valuable to humans because there is a reflection of reality. But the technology itself just processes numbers and probabilities.
Wow, that's huge. So let's bust a myth or two. Why is it not a sci-fi robot takeover? You've already explained why, because it's not very intelligent yet. Some of us fear. I mean, you've seen all the movies, right? It's you imagine this world where the robots are no longer the slaves; they're the masters, and they have control. Tell us why we're very far away from that.
Yeah,
or maybe not.
Yeah, it's hard to know. There's different problems. It's an interesting also political conversation. I actually saw an interesting analysis where the left is afraid of safety, meaning you coming in and asking how to build a bomb, right? And the right is afraid of alignment. And alignment is an interesting problem in AI. It basically says if you ask the AI, as an example, there's something called the paperclip problem. Make me a paperclip, right? And then it like ruins an entire mountain and, kills 50,000 people in order to make you a paperclip, right? Like it doesn't understand the human needs and the filters and all the stuff that are important and all those. So all those things are not solved yet. It's a big thing. Like both of those things need to be solved. I think safety is very difficult to solve, just like safety is very difficult to solve in the internet. The reality is with open source models becoming better and better than the commercial models, and at some point it's going to be a complete parity and then eclipse, then that means safety is out of the gate. Like you can't assume you can create a safe model when it's just open source and it's math and, it can do whatever you want. Alignment is something I think everybody wants because it doesn't matter actually if you're like quote unquote bad actor, meaning you're using it for bad things, but you don't want the thing to go against you because you have your own kind of self-preservation. There's no intelligence right now. So it is that statistics. It is that even decision making. When we talk about agents, we're really talking about sophisticated decision trees, right? So the key difference between standard automation, as most people understand it, it's a list of rules, right? If this, then that. If this, then that. Doesn't matter if you have 5,000 of them or 5 of them. With agent automation, and now in standard automation or classic automation, some people can think about it as robotic process automation, right? So it's automatic and it's a process. And you need to know all the potential options, right? So it's kind of like you need to know exactly all the intersections, all of the turns, to have 100% accurate reflection map in reality. With agent work, it's kind of like it's like a GPS. You're like, here's the destination, and here's the car, here's the tool, and the driver's going to get there. And maybe there's going to be a bump on the road. Maybe he's going to need to stop 50 times. Maybe they're going to need to take a detour. But the agent understands the mission, and they have its tools, and they're going to accomplish it. So agents are amazing because they're very sophisticated and very flexible, and they're becoming more flexible, more sophisticated over time. But they're still very elaborate if-thens. The innovation that's happening is that we don't need to define all the ifs and all the thens. We just need to define the mission. Go to that restaurant, be there at 7 p.m. I love, for example, when I'm in Phoenix, and now they just launched it in Austin, Texas, I love using Waymo. The autonomous car. It's by far my preferred method of travel when I'm there.
Wow.
My favorite thing, one of the things I'm excited for whenever I fly into Phoenix.
Is it, as a technologist, you kind of geek out
so much
on it, or is it you just don't want to be left alone, and it's the only car you can get into to be left alone?
No, it's I geek out, and it's a pleasant experience because suddenly you're in a car and you realize, oh, there's no driver. You can talk about whatever you want. You don't have to strike up a conversation. You're not getting in a car that's smelly of like cannabis or something.
Yeah. Or you want them to turn down your music because you're going to be on a call, or you want to apologize because you're going to be on a call.
Exactly.
I find this a lot because I travel a lot for business. Not a lot, but it's awkward because I don't want to hear their conversation for sure. Their music might be bothering me. Yeah. I'm trying to get on a call. I don't want to be rude. There's a lot. You're right. I didn't never think about all those things.
And it's an interesting kind of nervous system experience. The first time you realize, like, I was in a 45-minute drive, and I'm like, wow, I can just talk to my wife on the phone about anything I want, and I get and I'm not feeling awkward. I'm feeling way safer. And the economics are nice, but I wouldn't say Uber and Lyft already kind of broke the economics, like made those rides affordable. But even then, would I pay a $60 Uber ride, I pay like $15 or $18 with Waymo.
Wow, so it is substantially cheaper
because you don't have the hourly, you don't have the hourly, you don't have the insurance, you don't have
they're not doing a share, they're not doing a revenue share with this individual.
That's right.
Wow, I've never had this opportunity. I do go to Dallas from time to time. This is cool. Wow.
But I don't know if they're in Dallas. They're definitely in Austin.
They're in Austin. Okay,
but,
I go from Austin to Austin.
But they expand out. They, I think they're in San Francisco, Phoenix, and Austin right now. But those kind of things, that Waymo thing is happening across all software stuff. So I think I gave a workshop just last week, and I said, if you can do your job, if you can basically deliver value on Zoom or phone, here's the reality. AI will do it better than you, and for 1,000 of the cost. Now we're negotiating on time. Like, when is that going to happen? Actually, let me frame something I gave in that talk, because people, I think, back to your question, like underappreciating the impact that's coming, right? In the 1960s, right, the US executed in the Apollo program, put a man on the moon, right? Big program. In today's dollars, about $20 billion a year of equivalent like investment adjusted to inflation. The Manhattan Project changed the world, right? Nuclear bomb changed the course of history. About $6 billion in today's dollars invested at the time in the Manhattan Project. You know how much dollars were invested on AI projects last year, 2024?
I want to say $250 billion.
$500 billion.
Wow, so I was close. Hey, that's not bad.
So think about humanity put a man on the moon and did the Manhattan Project for like less than 5% of what we're seeing.
Wow.
And
so
in 1 year,
money spent. A lot of money spent.
A lot of money, a lot of attention, and that's just 2024. I can't imagine 2025. So, and of course beyond. So this is exploding in a rapid pace. It's sparing no one. And at the same time, you see this now. Software engineers are having a hard time getting jobs, which for years everybody thought, oh, you made it, right? You're not a software engineer, you made it. No longer the case. But plumbers are making more than software engineers now.
Of course.
Electricians are making more than software engineers.
You can't AI a plumber. I talk about this all the time.
Can't AI a plumber. Atoms need to move in space. So if you're moving that and humans live in the physical space, we might communicate in the virtual space, but we live in the physical space. We need to eat. We need to socialize. We need to, our bodies go cold and hot and hungry and weak, like all these things, the reality is real. And those professions are here for a long time. That said, those business owners in those professions can dramatically benefit. Maybe they now can have an entire marketing team that's fully AI, and sales team that's fully AI, and a finance team that's fully AI. So you can have a plumber that otherwise would have needed to only take home $150,000 a year as a successful plumbing business. Maybe now they can make $250,000 or $300,000 a year as a successful plumbing business, because all of the backstage, all of the back office can be supported by AI, which is incredible. It means we're going to have basically more plumbers and more electricians.
That's crazy. No, I absolutely see that as a smallish, medium-sized company. One of the things we couldn't compete with is, man, I don't want to go bidding on projects and reviewing 90-page documents. I don't have time for this, and I don't have the money to just offload it to an attorney who charges $1,500 a month, or even an analyst. Now I could feed it into ChatGPT. It gives me the summary. It gives me things to look out for, and I'm still going to read that contract, but now I know where my eyes are going to go and where my negotiation should start. So now I don't have to do that. Right? I can eventually create an agent to negotiate on my behalf, right? And just directly start communicating my concerns.
That's it.
To the client. It's incredible.
Yeah. And what you're building is the trust of the clients, which, humans like to be able to trust something.
Yeah, of course. One of the most unique angles that you bring when you talk about AI, I think, is AI in parenting. Mm-hmm. How did that interest develop? Like, tell me a little bit about that.
So, I remember this. This is December 2022, so a couple of weeks after ChatGPT came out, and I was on vacation with my kids. And I'm sitting and my kid was just before 7 at the time. And we were sitting on the couch, and he asked me a question in Minecraft, like, Dad, in Minecraft, how do I get to I think, village something, like a human village, hidden village? And I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't play Minecraft. And as soon as I said, I'm like, you know what? Let me ask ChatGPT. Mm-hmm. And I opened ChatGPT and I put in, how do I get to, the secret village or whatever that was? And sure enough, it's like, open the chat, /locate, space, structure, space, village. And I'm like, okay. And I open it. I did it. And we got there. And he's like, wow. And I'm like, holy heck.
You're a hero now. Look at that.
I'm a hero. And then, I love my kids, but I'm not a great storyteller, personally. I don't have that on the fly ChatGPT-ish capabilities, right? So then I started, even then, I'm like, okay, we were on vacation. So we were in Hawaii, and we were just seeing turtles. And so end of the day, I'm with my 2 boys, and I have 2 boys and a girl. And I'm with my 2 boys, putting them to sleep. My girl was a baby at the time. And I'm like, okay, let's put can you create a bedtime story for me that has a Power Ranger theme and, sea turtles, and add a couple of fart jokes because they're boys and it's funny.
Yep.
And sure enough, it created this, story. And I'm a great reader, right?
Yes.
I'm great at making things up. And it was amazing. And then it started this thing. Oh my gosh, now we can kind of personalize our family experiences with all these things. So I started exploring other areas. Okay, what, if it's just basic family planning and food and travel, and logging in, vacations that way, and also communicated with my wife. I'm like, well, there's a sensitive topic we need to talk about. What's the best way to broach this? So then we start to get to that value of a professional therapist, right? So it just escalated into all areas of personal life that I know. It's kind of like when you think about it, can you use a super smart person that's extremely knowledgeable about your problem and has decades of experience? And if the answer is yes, you should probably consider using these tools to help.
It's amazing. Lior, you when we spoke, you talked a little bit about launch first method, right? Because you're big in the startup world. Yeah. And you talked about that and how to minimize risk for startups. Let's talk a little bit about that as we get closer to talking about your company and what you do and all that.
Yeah, I think, there's all these doctrines that were developed over time on how to develop great products and also de-risk. And when I say de-risk, it could be de-risk capital, de-risk time, but primarily create experiences that people love. So one of my favorite doctrines, I've learned it as a younger entrepreneur, was a book called The 4 Steps to the Epiphany. Basically talk about what later got popularized as customer discovery. Well, it was teaching customer discovery. It was later popularized by Eric Ries with his book Lean Startup. So how do you do this kind of? So this is not the system you use to create an iPhone. This is the system you use to create reliable products that people like, right? Not these super innovations. And it's basically saying, how can you interview your customers and make sure you ask the right questions to make sure you're hitting on a pain, something they actually care about, to the point that they're willing to, use your product, pay money, and so on and so forth. So that process is basically an iterative, inquisitive process. One of the books I love recommending is called The Mom Test. It's this little pink book, basically how to ask questions. So even your own mom is not going to give you a false positive. It's not going to give you, hey, Lior, this is a great idea. You should totally do it, right? This is one of the riskiest feedback you can get from friends and clients. So you ask questions to learn about the needs, and then you develop, wireframes, and maybe you show them the wireframes, and you develop designs, maybe you show them the designs. All of this are just de-risking points before you spend the big bucks and do code, right? That's super expensive. But now you have these incredible platforms. Actually, I'll give a shout out to one of the amazing platforms I played with this week called Base 44. So this is in the category of no code prompt to product. So this is where you can basically have engineers at your fingertips. You share a few. So I want to create a web app that helps me, help restaurant servers calculate their tips, whatever it is. And it can be as simple as like a one-liner, like I just said, or you can go to ChatGPT, Claude, create like entire books worth of instructions and product visions and paste it into these tools. And then you have your own engineering team. You have your own design team. They go to town, right? They create the product, the designs, they create the database connections, the security, the whole thing. So some of the top products that exist, most popular products that exist in the market now, you have Replit, R-E-P-L-I-T. You have Lovable, like a Lovable product, Lovable.dev. You have Bolt.new. All of these are pretty incredible. But as of now, AI, you have to, every time you talk about a product, you have to add the caveat as of now, because that statement is going to change probably a few weeks from now. Base 44 had done the best integration I've seen of kind of prompt to product in terms of really high quality figure out ability on features and technical details and all that. And the fact that now as an entrepreneur, even like I've seen a year ago, a YouTube of an 8-year-old, just like going to YouTube, like it's recording on YouTube, just sharing her vision for a game. And within an hour, she created a full blown, game. Wow. She can technically sell if you wanted to. And so you're able to fabricate a vision. So the most common programming language, it's not even just programming language. The most common, like business language, is becoming English, right? Because if you can just kind of abracadabra it, saying, this is what I'm thinking, help me think this through. And now that you thought it through, go ahead and create it. And then you have these systems to just create on the fly. And then within minutes, like I was in a meeting, I was in a talk. Somebody gave a talk about de-risking like portfolio. Like it was an investment manager kind of thing, very experienced, managed like $200 billion of capital. And he was sharing his portfolio strategy. And as he was talking, I was just like opening my laptop and putting in, help me create this portfolio analyzer that does these things. And I was kind of inputting all the things that he shared. By the time he finished the talk, right, I tapped him on the shoulder. I'm like, hey, come see this. I showed him a full-blown product of like a portfolio analyzer with it. He blew his mind. To be honest, blew my mind.
That's incredible.
Why? Because it's like it's no homework. Like you have an idea, get the product, get feedback. Like, incredible. So it's not only helping, and you see this now, you see these companies are hitting 50 million annual recurring revenue, 100 million annual recurring revenue with like 10 employees, 20 employees, crazy. So it's not just for those kind of companies, but it's also for anybody can now be an entrepreneur and earn 5-6 figures a year, maybe 7 figures, by thinking about super valuable products for a niche audience and actually being able to sell it within a day.
That's insane. Or Lior, I'm thinking as a small company, you could create, agents, or you can create a product for internal use. There's so many ideas that I have that I want to build it, but then it's expensive and time consuming to build it with a partner company, or to take my engineers off of their deployed project where we're billable to now work on an internal product. They may not be able to do. So it's always interesting, right? Because everybody has a niche. Oh no, I'm really a back end guy. You really need a front end for that. Oh, well, who would I work with on the user design? I'm not a designer, clearly. Oh man, now I got to go hire a designer. I got to, right? Lior, I feel like this is a weird thing to say, but I feel like my buddy and I were talking about this. we're like frogs in boiling water, and we think we're in a jacuzzi, right? Like when I say we're all frogs, software engineers,
Yeah.
service providers, like eventually we're going to be boiling, right?
Yeah.
Because we're for the last 10 years been building our replacement. Tell me what
Yeah.
your thoughts are on that.
I'm generally, so there's, like any topic about technology, right? There's the pessimist, the optimist. I'm definitely on the optimist side. Like you can go to news articles from the 1800s talking about automation will replace us, and certainly from the early 1900s, robots are taking over, automation will replace us. Da, da, da. So, and the reality is, historically, every time it happened, there was an explosion of productivity and labor and opportunity. It doesn't mean that complete industries didn't disappear, right? Like I think 1885, the Mercedes-Benz, not Mercedes, the Benz engine was introduced, combustion engine, 3/4 of a horsepower, right? And we had like it was 4 horses, 1 horse, I think, for every 4 people, or 4 horses for one person in the US. And now there's like a 97% reduction in number of horses, right? And they're not used for transportation or labor or anything productive besides mostly entertainment and the odd farming job. So sometimes entire industries wipe out. In many cases, they do. And the key difference between what's happening now and then are a few key differences. One is the speed, meaning our ability as a society to metabolize a change. We kind of made it happen, meaning people had enough time to retrain, find something else. Doesn't mean that everybody did it, but as a society, everybody did it, right? Meaning we moved on and people found new forms of labor. So now the speed is much different. So that's good or bad. The bad is, of course, whoa, people just spend 4 years, getting computer science degrees, and now they can't even get a job. So that's, not the good part. But the good part is now 8-year-olds can have their own businesses, and meaning more people can participate in the economy. People with ideas that didn't have the fortitude or the money to go and learn software engineering and learn design, to your point, now but they have good ideas. Now, just with the power of their ideas, they can fabricate a business and a product, which means we expect way more explosion of productivity across the board. Now, what's interesting about both dystopia and utopia is in both visions, people don't work. Right? In utopia, nobody's working because people are doing everything for us. In dystopia, nobody's working because humans don't have anything to do. So I think a lot of it is perspective. And I tend to fall on the optimist side. Now, I did say what I said, like if you give your value over Zoom or phone, AI will do it better in 1,000 of a cost. But a lot of it is not. I think new forms, I believe in human ingenuity. I think new forms of ideas, new forms of labor, new forms of productivity, just like right now, even for me, when I started developing, I was very young. It was like C and assembly and Pascal. Nobody, some people program in C, nobody programs in those languages anymore, right? So we had to reinvent ourselves and be relevant again. So I think that's true again, and that's true always. And now people are going to have to pivot faster and iterate quicker. But personally, I think with more capabilities, more ideas, more opportunities, and I am subscribed to whatever you do now for a job for money is going to go away.
Within what time frame? What do you predict it before it's truly because every AI that I've implemented, either bought through a partner company, built or whatever, it still hasn't replaced anyone. But my whole thought process isn't to replace; it's to enhance and speed up. But do you know what I'm saying? Like, at what point will you not need it?
Like definitely think augment instead of automate or replace. But, to be fair, like even when you think about it, so let's say you augment a customer service rep or a sales rep, and now they're able to support 2 times or 10 times more customers, right? Or prospects. The reality is you're not hiring new people.
Exactly. I was going to say it will eventually do that where you say, no, we got this with the 12 people we have, versus before you'd say, well, I need another person. I need another one. I need another one. Wow.
And we see this. So Klarna was very famous last year. They came out and said that, they hadn't renewed a Salesforce contract because they figure they can build a lot of it themselves. The CEO just clarified some of that on X recently. But the biggest thing is they tooled their customer service so much. So they had a natural churn on customer service, about 20%, lose 20% a year. A lot, that's very common for customer service, right? But because of their tooling, we decided not to rehire. Meaning
That's it.
They're not firing people, but they're using natural attrition, right? So I think that's going to happen, but it is a labor impact as a whole. So maybe you as a business owner, you're not firing, but not hiring means from a general economic perspective, you have a similar impact on the
100%.
economy. I do think for some roles, it's already there. Some industries, it's already there. I think it's going to hit everybody though in the next 36 months. I don't see how not.
So within 3 years, you'll see, and within 2 to 3 years, we're looking at a legitimate impact on what you can do with less, basically.
Yeah, which to me, I think what's going to happen economically, we're going to have way more companies, way more competition, way more people being able to basically be self-employed as opposed to being reliant on a job. So I don't think it's going to make people more unemployed. I think it's going to make more people self-employed. So I don't think overall economy dollars are going to go down. I think it's going to go up, but not in the forms that we're used to, not in the forms of you getting a W-2, but rather you making your own 1099.
Lior, there's if you've ever been to Qatar or Dubai, you from what I understand, if you've been to any of those countries, the locals don't work. Right, because the way it is the oil money basically takes care of them, and the country is run by temporary immigrants. I don't know if that's what you'd call them, because they're temporary. They're temporary workers that come in to work, and so you rarely see the local people. I can see in 5-10 years, I was saying 20, but I think we're probably only 10 years away from 80% unemployment, and those people are supported by the 20% of the companies, let's say AI companies that are taxed very heavily to pay for these people's livelihoods, because they have to eat, right? But there's no jobs for them, so in return someone has to pay for this.
So most hourly, so I forgot what the recent number is, but I was in this market a few years ago. There were like 80 million hourly workers in the US. By and large, those hourly workers are not like electronic, so I don't think those jobs are going to go away at all. In fact, I think that those jobs are only going to go up and they're going to get paid more. Now there's, the McDonald's machines and all those, POS and retail and all that, but we're many, many years away from that, because the big constraint is actually hardware. It's actually pretty difficult to develop good hardware at scale, right? So I think I don't see that. Not in the US. A lot of it is cultural as well. Like when you're talking about Middle Eastern mindset, it's not an inherently like, let's create new things, create our own businesses mindset. So for them, the way they run their governments, also more monarchical in nature, with the Emirates or Qatar. So it's different. From a just pure philosophy perspective, the citizenry is different. The American one, or the West, is way more, kind of batteries included, from a very competitive sports, all these things, right? So like everything about the culture is way more, not I was about to say forward thinking. It's not forward thinking. It's just like make your own. It's the American dream, the American concept. So I don't think it's going to be that impact. I don't think it's like 80% unemployment at all. I think that would be absolutely terrible though if that happens. So I am definitely afraid of that scenario. I'm not subscribed to that.
And some people they fantasize about not working, right? And the closest thing I've been to that is the closest thing to like people fantasize about not working, right? The closest thing that I have to that, to successful people, is us entrepreneurs dream of building successful businesses and exiting and retiring. But you probably know a bunch. In fact, you might be one of those. Is how many of those folks 6 months, a year later are consulting for someone else, starting up another company because they have the itch, right? Because our purpose, my purpose is obviously my family. My number one why, my purpose is my family, my wife, my kids, people close to me around that. But besides that is this need to get up and go, go to the
Yeah.
gym, then go to the office, then help people and scale. Once that goes away, most people are actually pretty miserable. So that's the part, right? Because someone gets to take this. Oh my God, I would love to be in a situation where I don't work, but I don't
Yeah.
think it's accurate. I think most of us want to work and want to. In fact, most retirees, very old ones, die unless they find a very quick purpose, right?
Yeah, I mean, retirement is a bad word for me. I don't like it. All of my entrepreneurs friends don't like it as well. I think
Yeah,
just like you said, I mean, there's a lot of statistics around, how fast do you die once you stop working,
yeah.
and you stop feeling productive and being productive. And I think this is actually going to be a huge renaissance for the elderly, because a lot of elderly are intellectually sound. A lot of my friends, I have a lot of entrepreneur friends that are well over 75 and 80, and they're extremely productive. Their future is way bigger than their past as far as they're concerned and how they're operating. And now suddenly you give those people the superpower of taking their thoughts into products and services. Oh my gosh, I think we're going to see an explosion of that golden age, as opposed to them being retired. Now they're going to contribute back to the economy.
They have such tremendous crystallized intelligence
That's right.
that you're absolutely right. Physically, they might not be able to get up and go as fast, and their mind is so sound. And now maybe they don't have to get up and go physically from their homes, but now they can go create products and write faster.
I think it's going to unlock huge economic opportunities just on that alone.
Incredible. I didn't even think about that angle. That's huge. Lior, tell me a little bit about CTOX and what you do with it, and how people can find you because you clearly know AI very well. I'm sure you're using this expertise to drive business. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so with CTOX, we started it last year because we realized there was this huge, the world is moving back from buy to build, right? That's how people used to do technology in the 90s, early 2000s. They raised a lot of money. They hired the engineers. They built their own products. And then SaaS came over, Salesforce, companies like that, and said, instead of you building from scratch, we're going to build it, and we're going to license a fraction of our functionality and feature set to you for a lower price. So it makes much more sense to lease the capability than own the capability. But now with this trend, everything is shifting. And I believe that everybody is really, whether they want it or not, they are a technology company. You are a tech company. And so with CTOX, we realized, wow, there's all these incredible tech leaders. And I've myself been a fractional CTO, meaning I take the CTO position in multiple companies, and I kind of say it's the same accountability, same responsibility. So you get 100% of the outcome for a fraction of the cost. Because the reality is, if you're a $20 or $50 million revenue business, you don't need me full time. It's kind of a waste of dollars, right? It depends on the resources and how many things we're managing. So there's all these incredible tech leaders all over the world, and they want variety. They want clients. You have this, super influx of small to mid-sized businesses that want technology but can't pay that starting $500,000 a year plus upside plus equity to CTOs with a lot of experience. So we teach them. So CTOX is two-sided. We teach amazing tech leaders how to go fractional. And then we help companies that want to have technology leadership access amazing technology talent for a fraction of the cost. So if you're either a tech leader and you want to learn how to become a fractional CTO, or take your existing fractional CTO business into, high six, maybe low seven figures, please contact us. We'd love to have you. And then if you're a business that's thinking, how can I get great technology leadership for a fraction of the cost? Let us know. We have, hundreds of them. They can support hundreds of businesses, if not thousands. And we'd love to pair you up with a great result.
Amazing. That's really good, Lior. One last question, if you have one more minute.
Yes, please.
What advice do you have, and we'll make this the last one, what advice do you have for tech leaders trying to integrate, or forget tech leaders period, trying to integrate AI into our businesses effectively? Because there's a lot of noise, and there's FOMO, right? And there's a lot of wasted movements. How do you make sure that that's not the case?
So I think one of my favorite, there's a couple of mental models I would recommend. One is think about your organization, like actually draw your organizational org chart. Like when's the last time you did it, right? Like literally all the people and their responsibilities. Because those line item responsibilities, and the very best way to do it is do like a time study. You can Google time study examples, kind of play by play every 15 minutes or an hour. What does each person do, right? And they can do that over a day or a week. And you can start looking at that and saying, well, this should be AI supported, right? Augmented, or maybe this can convert to an AI agent. So some of the projects we're doing now is actually, well, what's the handoff between an agent and a human?
Yep.
And what are the tools that we can develop to help the humans and do those handoffs and be more productive. So think about, rebuild your organizational chart with all the positions and their responsibilities. Do a time study on the position to start figuring out what should be augmented. I like to ask, what activity in your business, an activity change with like emails or revenue or customers, whatever the word activity is, if you had 10x that activity, where would you feel you would break at the seams? And if the answer is like yes, then you identified some kind of a human constraint in the activity. Like if you're like, well, if we had 10 times the email, I would need to work weekends and hire more people. Okay, you identified something that needs humans. So let's look at that, as a potential spotlight and then build from there. The best advice I can give though, is that I get this question all the time. Where can I keep up to date with AI? And I'm like, or what are all the websites? What are all the tools? I need to know all the tools. And I'm like, that's kind of looking at the internet in 1998, yes. 1995 and saying, what are all the websites? I just want to know all the websites. Like that's just, it's an impossibility insane. And it's the wrong mental model. So start bottom up, not top down. Not what exists in the market, but what actual things in your business, whether it's cost or time that you want to solve, and then look what solution is out there.
That's such good advice, Lior. In fact, for us, 90% of the stuff that we played with 2 years ago, we've already let go.
Retired. Absolutely.
Retired. And I'm an AI, and I invest in a lot of AI startups, and most of them are still in automation or they've been killed by a new release of ChatGPT already.
Yeah.
So
killed by a feature release.
You know what I'm saying? So this is what we're seeing. Lior, we've learned so much, man. Any parting gifts for us as we all move on from this great episode?
I like to talk about the other AI, artificial intimacy. I would say don't let AI replace you. Like let AI do all the things you don't want to do.
That's very good. That's very good, Lior. Yeah. Thank you so much, man. Really been great having you. Learned a ton. I know my audience has as well. Appreciate you. And that brings us to the end of another great episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. I want to thank you for joining us and hope you took away some valuable insights to apply in your professional journey. Don't forget to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform so you don't miss out on the next great conversation. I promise it'll be good. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd appreciate if you could leave us a review. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps others discover the podcast. Better leaders mean better working environments. Better working environments leads to happier people. Remember, a rising tide lifts all boats. I'm Avetis Antaplyan, and this has been the Tech Leaders Playbook. Keep leading, keep learning, keep giving, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, stay inspired, my friends.